Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We're about to start. My name is Strahinja Subotić, and I'll be the host for today's event. It is my pleasure to host the event that marks the Handover Council Presidency. This is actually the 17th time that we discuss this important project. Each and every time we discuss the achievements of the outgoing presidency and the priorities and plans of the incoming presidency. We, European Policy Center, have been always doing this with the support of EU Delegation, and we're thankful that this cooperation has continued this long. And we hope that the cooperation will continue for the years to come. I would like to introduce our guests. As you know, we'll discuss the priorities of the and the achievements of the outgoing Hungarian presidency. We'll also discuss the priorities of the incoming Polish presidency, while having in mind the ongoing developments in the EU on most important affairs, notably including enlargement policy, which is why we have domestic representatives both from the ministry but also from civil society. In that context, I'd like to introduce my guests before I go with the technical details of today's event. Sitting next to me is Ms. Kamilla Duda-Kawecka from the Polish Embassy, acting as Chargé d'Affaires. Thank you for joining us for the first time. Then we have Emanuele Giaufret, the head of EU Delegation. Thank you for joining us for, I stopped counting how many times. My dear colleague, Program Director of European Policy Center, Milena Mihajlović Denić. Thank you for joining us. Then we have Ambassador Jozsef Magyar. You can guess, he's representing the Hungarian embassy. Second time in a row. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Mr. Gačević, who is stepping in on behalf of the Ministry of European Integration. Luckily, we have a suitable replacement, because unfortunately Tanya couldn't join us due to some health concerns she has at the moment, and we hope she recovers very soon. And thank you once again for joining us. Before we start with the debate, I'd like to inform you that we shall have 2 rounds of questions that I have prepared for dear panelists today. Once the 2 rounds of comments and questions are exhausted, we'll proceed to you, the audience, who will have the opportunity to pose questions and comments to our panelists. In a nutshell, we'll wrap up the whole discussion in an hour and a half, and I hope you will enjoy this discussion. First of all, I'd like to start with Mr. Giaufret. As you've mentioned, you've been with us a couple of times already, and I remember a year and a half ago when we talked about the start of the trio presidency. Now we're marking the end of the trio presidency. At that time, we were facing a bleak situation. The war in Ukraine was ongoing, and we thought it couldn't get any worse. Yet it has. In the meantime, the war in Ukraine has continued. The situation in the Middle East has escalated, and new uncertainties have been created with the upcoming Trump 2.0 administration. In such a context, we even had French President Emmanuel Macron, who said that Europe is mortal, it can die, and it will die if we don't do anything about it. So my question to you is, do you share this assessment? And if so, what the EU has done in the past 6 months to address this pertinent issue? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be back on this format that I like very much, because it's a vivid representation of the continuity of the EU and the role that the member states play, the key role the member states play within the European Union. So let me start by thanking you and Sepp for the good cooperation, and thanking the Hungarian presidency for all the work they have accomplished during 6 months. Not yet finished, I still have a few days more, and I think they're going to be busy days. And of course, best of luck to the Polish presidency, that I'm sure will do a great job in stewarding the European Union. You refer to the challenges that we're facing and the words of President Macron. And obviously, the European Union is a political project that has been designed and is living through men and women, and everything that men and women do is always subject to the possibility of ending. This is a reality, but it was not really, in my view, an act of despair, what Macron, the President of France, indicated, but rather a call to action. So we need to be aware that the the circumstances in which we're going through at the moment are particularly challenging. They require a change of approach in a number of issues, and the European Union, member states, institutions, those men and women that are actually making the European Union live, need to make the right decisions. And I think this is probably a type of reaction that is shared by many, and also is reflected by many of the things that the European Union has already been doing in the last few years in response to this change of circumstances. And I'm sure we will see more of that. The first element, of course, is the way we reacted to the Russian aggression to Ukraine, and let's remember that the European Union has provided already to Ukraine 80 billion euros in economic assistance, humanitarian assistance, and military assistance. So this is a very substantial support. We've also been revitalizing all the tools we had already created when it comes to security, and we have seen that the European Defence Fund has been beefed up. We've been using the European Peace Facility in a much more articulated and actually massive way. PESCO, therefore military cooperation between member states, has been increasing. There's been an understanding that this geopolitical shift that we are witnessing today, that you have referred to, both in terms of the Russian aggression, to have a different administrations in Washington in a few weeks, and of course the instability and the wars in the Middle East, call for Europe to take more responsibility, to shoulder more responsibility. And the concept of strategic autonomy that has been already on the table for quite a few years is taking a different meaning and a different understanding. Of course, we see increasingly the needs of Europe and the member states to take more responsibility in defense, and I think Poland certainly has been doing on a national basis quite a lot. I think this is an indication other things are coming. And this strategic autonomy is there to, on one end, to safeguard the interest of the European Union. We have specific interests that we need to safeguard and we need to look after ourselves, but also to strengthen the transatlantic alliance with NATO. I think this is, for many member states, I think it's clearly that we want to continue to reinforcing that type of relationship. But this, of course, will require more investment in defense, and strengthening the multilateral partnership. This is where we're going. Then we also saw and this is, we saw and we continue seeing, what I'm saying is that things that have already happening and will probably will happen in a much more determined way, is all the issue related to the economic resilience of the European Union. We are able to remain a geopolitical actor as long as our economy remain competitive and able to deliver. So we have already started to, of course, work towards the decarbonization of the economy. This is something that we've been leading worldwide, and certainly we will continue. And this will require a number of steps. Our economy will need to adapt to the new reality. We'll need to have the means to adapt. This is, I want to highlight the Critical Raw Material Act as one of the legislative and policy step we took. I mean, this is, of course, in Serbia very much seen in the context of lithium and the Jadar project, but for us is a global policy. So this is part of a much bigger picture where we want to make sure that the European Union is able to extract critical raw material within the member states, and we have been supporting a number of mining projects and partnering with a number of countries, from Canada to Ukraine to Norway and many others, and Serbia as well, in order to make sure that these critical raw material are actually supplied, there's a security of supply, but also there is certain rules that are applied. And our legislations on battery, for example, make sure that the batteries imported into the European Union will be carbon neutral. They will be produced according to certain standards. So there is a strategy that is very articulated under many respects, which aim, of course, at making sure that the industry in the European Union remains competitive, and of course, but at the same time respecting certain standards. This is a little bit where we are, and of course the Draghi report is a bit of an attempt to taking stock of the situation and looking what we need to do. The Draghi report is also a little bit like the Macron Europe is mortal. I think Draghi said otherwise it will be a slow agony. I think that was his comment. So all these comments are really aiming at ensuring that the policymakers make the right decisions. And in fact, the Draghi report was discussed at the Budapest informal EU Council a few weeks ago. The Prime Minister Draghi was invited to present his report. And his report basically sketch out three areas. One is innovations. There is a gap between Europe, China, and the US. We need to close that gap. We need to continue decarbonizing the economy while remaining competitive. And this is the second point. And the third point is security. We need to, again, increase spending and spend in a more efficient way. So this is I think the indications on where we're going and where the next presidency will take us. And of course, I should not end without mentioning another aspect, which is part of how we respond to this challenge, which is enlargement, which is really part of this picture. We have been saying, and then I think we are increasingly conviction that enlargement is an investment in security for the European Union, in prosperity. We know that in the geopolitical world in which we operate, in order to remain relevant as a geopolitical actor, we need to, first of all, become larger. We need to have a heavier weight in terms of land mass, in terms of population, in terms of GDP, and we need to become stronger. And in order to be stronger, we need to be very cohesive. So the applications of Ukraine and Moldova that see the European Union as the place where they want to be to ensure to their citizens a prosperity, democracy, and a decent way of life in dignity, and the Western Balkans the same. These are good news. So we need to accelerate this process. And certainly the enlargement is really part of this rethinking of the European Union in order to be able to stand to the challenges that President Macron and Prime Minister Draghi have indicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Although my original question was a bit bleak, I like how you transitioned towards turning it into an asset that is making it as a call for action, linking what Macron said to what Draghi wrote and the actions that member states subsequently took or will take under Polish presidency. So with that in mind, I'd like to transition to Ambassador Magyar. We've heard just the calls for action from different parts of Europe, and once they did, you took over the Council presidency. You were, in my opinion, one of the more proactive ones, but on the downside maybe is that this created a fog of information. Everybody had an opinion about Hungary. So for me, I wanted to remain neutral and objective, which is why I consulted with the artificial intelligence, asking it to summarize in three key words, the Hungarian presidency, and this is what I got. Firstly, it argues that it was contentious because there were some clashes with the Commission President, some differences vis-a-vis the Russian issue. Secondly, it was pragmatic because it continued to focus on critical yet a bit sensitive questions such as migration. And thirdly, aspirational because it pushed so much the issue of enlargement, trying to make it an unavoidable point of discussions. So with that said, how would you agree with this assessment? And do you believe that Hungary has really pushed Europe forward in making it great again, as your slogan goes.
So thank you for inviting. It's a nice place here to talk about the future of the Europe. So I would say that please don't underestimate the new technologies like artificial intelligences, and in that regard I congratulate Serbia because just last week you organized here in Belgrade worldwide visible summit on new technologies, which is in which the part of this is the artificial intelligence. In that regard, we really want to be modernized as the European Union. In that regard, we count on the outcomes of the results, what the new technologies will produce. Regarding the whether we achieved for that goal what our slogan was, to make Europe great again. So we have to know that the Hungarian semester was a transitional one, but we look at it as really until now a very successful period of ours, because the new European institutions already formed, and we have started with them really with let's say with better circumstances, a joint job. And when we are talking about the 7 priorities of the Hungarian presidency, so we reached really great results. What already my colleague Emanuele mentioned, one of the main objectives was how to be more competitive in Europe, and also regarding with the global players. Some of the journalists in the Western web pages mentioning now that the Hungarian presidency will be in the memories of some people on that quotations, that everybody knows now that the price or the energy price in Europe or in the other global player is likely different. And this is true. In that regard, the Budapest Declaration, which was adopted on 8th of November with the full commitment of every member states who have been there, and the leaders of the European Union, and also Mr. Draghi, and very important people from the financial sector. So this is really a new momentum from the European Union, because everybody, without any doubt, recognized that Europe must be in the better shape. In that regard, there were 12 key areas where every member state acknowledged the importance that what will be the immediate task for the new European Commission, and really maybe the one key issue had to regain the better economic conditions within the European Union. And in that regard, the first focus will be how to strengthen the single market, because this is the key issue for our perspective. The economy, the better life of our people, and also the better conditions for the European companies, and also. And in that regard, the industrial policy will be very in our focus. Also, innovation and the all financial aspects of the competitiveness challenges. I would like to raise also the issue, the better, let's say, and the more coherent energy policy, which is also very crucial for the economy. And also we adopted the regulation, or one paragraph of our common goal regarding the development and research area, and we altogether find that if we would like to be in a better shape, every member states until the 2013 we have to increase the expenditure minimum 3% for the modern technologies, like, for example, artificial intelligence is. And also there is a very crucial for the SME sector that we agreed that the administrative procedure will be shut down minimum 25%, and this kind of burdens, I mean, the bureaucracy administration must be reduced also. Regarding the enlargement, we remain committed towards the enlargement, and we argued that it must be laid on the merit-based approach. Just a new and a very good info from the yesterday's inter-minister councils that the all member states approved joining Romania and Bulgaria the Schengen zone, which means that as of 1st of January, not only we will be stronger in the term of competitiveness, because there wouldn't be let's say making a stop at the border crossings when the people would like to enter the European Union, but in the same way there is a common task also to pay attention on the secure external border. In that regard, I mean, this control of the people will remain on our topics. We agreed jointly with Austrians and Bulgarians that we will, on three sides, will secure the external border, Bulgaria and Turkey, from the illegal migration. Regarding also with the other countries, don't forget that the Belgian presidency also opened a very good way towards the enlargement policy. We try to follow this path, and before the new commission already entered in force, in mid of October, we opened the first cluster with Albania. Now we are negotiating also about the sixth cluster with Albania, and also with some closures of most probably 4 chapters with Montenegro. And for us is a very good memory when the previous when we have been in the previous capacity as the presidency. It was more than 10 years. We finally closed every opened at that time chapters with Croatia, and we hope that these results will be followed very similarly with Montenegro as well. Regarding the Serbia, this is now a crucial moment in Brussels, really a very dynamic talks with the European member states. We know that how much the European Commission and the new leaders of the Council are ready to show their positive side towards the Serbia in regarding that Serbia also must reach a new results on the path of enlargement. And now the question is that how many member states will be constructive in that regard. We have heard some positive news from last night. The Coreper session will start today late afternoon, but the joint objective with the European Commission also that when Hungary or during the Hungarian presidency, it will be happen in Brussels, 18th of December, the Western Balkan and the European Summit, and after that it will be followed with the European Council, which is important because the new president of the Council, for him, that will be the very first Council in our semester. And until these days, we would like to see really very positive results with Serbia, which results will be delivered the whole process of the negotiations with Serbia towards the opening of the cluster 3. In that regard, of course, we will have really a serious job now. We would like to see that the new trio presidency will be also consistent in that regard, and really a merit-based approach will be available for every candidate countries, because we are talking now somehow in the bloc in that regard, that from the Western Balkans there are some positive signs for moving forward. Also, don't forget with the negotiation framework with Moldova, which is going on also in our presidency period, most probably until the December. Also, some positive news will be happened, how to finance, how to give more incentives for Moldova as well. The very important issue is in our priority, the future of the agriculture, the future of the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy. And in that regard, we had 4 ministerial meeting, but the last, which has happened on 9th of December, the conclusion was adopted with anonymously with the presence of every member states, that the agricultural policy must ensure the food security and the food safety in the next period. And also what will be also very crucial, that maybe in the 1 year period, I mean during maybe during the semester of the Danish colleagues, the new financial framework will be on the table, starting with discussion. And we want, as the Hungarians and the Central European countries, that the priorities regarding the agricultural policy will be strongly included into the next financial framework, which means that we are talking now about the period until the 2035. Right. And also, we put the importance in our priorities, the cohesion policy, and
evidently a lot of priorities, a lot of achievements.
Many things,
and we'll have time to continue discussing, but just if you can maybe wrap up, or would you like to continue in the second round, just to proceed with the Polish counterpart?
Just three figures. So we had in our plan how many councils meetings should be organized. What we prepared and already done, 14 informal ministerial meeting, council meeting, in Budapest, it was done. And as of 40 council meeting in Brussels, so we are now on the 35th, which means that until the end of December, we would like to fulfill our each commitments regarding the organizing and whether it is a transitional period for ours, but make it visible, and let's show that our presidency really was an impulsive one.
Thank you very much, and sorry for interrupting, just for the sake of time. It's evident that Hungary worked a lot to achieve its priorities, and in that context, we've heard how all the opportunities and challenges that exist that accompany a country that is supposed to handle the EU during a transitional period. And now, as this transitional period has ended, I'd like to move to Poland, who is actually taking charge of the Council at a time when the European Parliament, European Commission, and all the other bodies and institutions are actually fully operationalized. So in that sense, I'd like to ask you to share us your insights about the Polish ideas, priorities in the following period, particularly as currently we don't have access to a Polish program officially. I don't have. In any case, you would be the first one to share us your key priorities in the next 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's first time for me here. I'm really glad to be here. I think it will be much more challenging in 6 months if you decide to again invite me or someone from the embassy to sum up the presidency. It is, for Poland, it is the second time, of course, that we are taking over as the head of the Council of the European Union. First time we took this role in 2011, And it was as Hungary now, the second part of the year, so we dealt hugely with enlargement. I was then in Brussels. I was personally actually taking part in the negotiations. The budget of our presidency is roughly 1 million euros for this year planned, and it is basically the same as it was 13 years ago. We decided to cut down on many additional, maybe not necessary costs of some events and gadgets. But still, we are planning some 23 informal council meetings to take place in Poland, plus around 300 expert meetings. There are 3,000 people working for the presidency in Poland, and we are expecting about 40,000 guests to visit Poland during the incoming 6 months. That's it for the numbers. Institutionally speaking, as you mentioned, it is truly a good momentum. As the institutions are formed and in full swing, it is a good momentum to take brave decisions. However, I'd like to underline that, of course, the presidency is maybe a powerful notion, but it's not omnipotent. We always require we will be presiding council in different formats, of course, but we will have to work on the agreement of all the member states, or in some cases, the majority of member states. Plus, we cannot forget about the very significant role of the EU institutions. The Commission, the Parliament, the EAS. Politically speaking, Poland takes over the presidency in a time of uncertainty and a lot of concerns. To name the few only, consequences of Russia's third year of armed aggression against Ukraine, increasing geopolitical tensions, not only in Europe, on other continents, the erosion of the rule-based international order, hybrid attacks, consequences of the migration pressure that we still feel in Europe, the energy transition, the declining, unfortunately, competitiveness of the European economy, the climate change, consequences of which we see basically every day. All these affect Europe and Europeans. I think that Europeans need therefore a sense of security and prospects for development. Europe must protect itself, must protect its citizens, and also care for its immediate neighborhood. Therefore, the main slogan of the Polish presidency is Security Europe. We had the grand, let's call it opening, the presentation of the program just a few days ago in Warsaw. And we will support activities strengthening European security in all its possible dimensions, be it external. Ambassador Giaufret mentioned our investments in security, the hard security, let's call. It is true, due to our geographical position, we do not feel very secure these days. Internal security, information security, I mentioned hybrid attacks, but also economic, energy, and food and health. Ambassador Magyar mentioned the agricultural policy. For Poland, it is equally important, but we are thinking here also about the health issues, the access to medications, for example, and well-being of Europeans. For this to achieve or to be achievable, we need, of course, the unity of the European Union, but also a willingness to work together with the partners who share our values, including those, of course, aspiring for the EU membership. Coming to enlargement, we will definitely support it. We are a strong, and we've always been a strong supporter of the idea of enlargement. I personally have been working with enlargement for, let me count, almost 20 years now. So I am convinced personally, and I'm not the only one in Poland, believe me, that welcoming new members is a geopolitical imperative for the EU. We have to become larger, as Ambassador Giaufret mentioned, and it is one and only opportunity for the EU to spread stability and growth across the continent. We will definitely be seeking sustained support for Ukraine and its reconstruction, as well as we will be hopeful for a swift end to the ongoing aggression. The transatlantic ties are also of the utmost importance, having in mind the shift across the ocean also in terms of power. What I would like to underline at the very end of this intervention, the rule of law. The fundamental European values are not what we are used to and what we live by, are not given. They are not there with us forever, so we will need to fight for them. We will need to promote them in all possible aspects. And this will be, the rule of law will be one of the main values that will be guiding us during our presidency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad we have this exclusive news about the new motto and priorities of the Polish presidency, and we wish you all the best and good luck in the next 6 months. And I'd like to turn my attention to Mr. Gačević, who's speaking on behalf of the Ministry, as Assistant Minister at the Ministry for European Integration. We've just heard from both presidencies that there is this continuity in terms of prioritization of enlargement, seen as a geopolitical imperative, but also a process that is supposed to be transformative for the candidate country in question. The last time we spoke to the ministry, it was Tanja Mišević 6 months ago, who told us that the ambitions were high, that the aim was actually to open Cluster 3 by the end of the year. There was even talk about IBAR, the interim benchmark assessment report, in the aftermath of Montenegro getting a positive assessment of the fulfillment of its interim benchmarks. So my question to you is, we just see that we still haven't received the green light by the Council to open Cluster 3, and IBAR, for Serbia at least, seems a bit out of sight at the moment. So my question to you is, how do you explain this development or lack of it? And what Serbia has done in the past 6 months to address the concerns of several skeptical member states vis-a-vis Serbia? Thanks.
Well, good morning, and it is my great pleasure to be here with you, and thanks for your questions. Actually, I would just like to pay attention on two major things that you asked. And regarding the lack of advancement in the negotiation process, I mean, it is very important to stress that negotiation process itself, it's very complex one. So it's not one-dimensional process. And more importantly, I would like to make a differences between negotiation process and integration process. While I could agree that there is a stallment in the negotiation process for quite some time currently. So it's been 3 years since we opened the Cluster 4. And I clearly remember, because I was in Brussels back then, when we were opening Cluster 3, some of the member states back then were skeptical about the reform agenda that we were pursuing back then, exactly the referendum on constitutional amendments. And they actually were reluctant to give us a green light for the additional cluster, which was ready even back then, Cluster 3, linking it to fulfillment of this firstly referendum, to organize referendum, successfully organized referendum, when it comes to changing constitution in terms of judiciary. But then we faced what happened in the beginning of 2024 sorry, 2022, and actually it totally changed the perception of the negotiation process. What Serbia and what we been doing all this time in order to change our position, I would like that the biggest challenge is actually the perception. And that perception actually persists on both sides. I will just try to explain how it is problematic. We are all aware about a huge polarization in our society, especially when it comes to the EU. And we've been listening concerning messages from the EU about low percentage, especially amongst youngsters, people, when it comes to the EU itself. And that's a direct link with this low percentage, because our people they just actually don't see that possibility of joining the EU is realistic. On the other side, some of the Western countries, they see these low numbers as the fact that our people don't believe and don't share the EU values, which is again a false perception. And how we should overcome this issue, it's very simple. When you look at our negotiation process, we are approaching the end of the first part of negotiation process. I mean, in terms of opening clusters. Ever since the beginning of the negotiation process, member states have on their disposal around 100 possibilities to veto or to block the negotiation process. Definitely, stallment at this stage is not helpful to anyone, neither to us nor to the EU itself, in terms of sending positive messages to Serbian citizens. I'm quite positive that with the advancement in this EU path, this discrepancy will be significantly shrinking, and the polls towards the EU, I mean towards the positive attitude to the EU, will be much better. And I would just like to use this opportunity to give a special thanks to Ambassador Giaufret, because ever since he came, he's been really instrumental in overcoming these bad perceptions. That's something which we really need more in order to pursue on a much better better level, if I may say, on this EU path. Thank you.
Is it working? Yeah. Thank you very much for this explanation. I do agree that even when we do advocacy, sometimes as civil society we face some perception gaps, and we try to break some stereotypes or illusions. But at the same time, it is a fact that now with the reform agenda, there are high expectations that going beyond the perceptions that it is necessary to implement it properly, on time, effectively, so that we can use it as a tool to break those perceptions. And with this, I'd like to turn to my colleague, Milena. As we all know, and I like to highlight this, that we all know that the New Growth Plan was largely, not completely, but largely influenced by our thinking about our state succession model, of whose Milena is one of the co-authors. And the model also, like the New Growth Plan, emphasizes increasing financial incentives in exchange for implementing reforms across all clusters. So conditionality is key, while increasing the financial carrot is a way to go. Of course, our model goes beyond, but that's a different topic. So with this said, Milena, I wanted to ask you your perception. What is the potential of the Reform and Growth Facility and the reforms set out in the reform agenda in genuinely accelerating Serbia's accession process and maybe breaking those perception issues that Mr. Gačević previously mentioned?
Thank you, Strahinja, and it is wonderful to actually have our first event in Europe House precisely to be this event, so we have a much nicer and larger space. In response to your question, the growth plan is primarily a convergence instrument. It was designed primarily as an instrument to support the socioeconomic convergence of the Western Balkans with the EU, and only in the second place as an instrument that is supposed to support and advance the formal negotiations or the accession process. Of course, those two need to go hand in hand. This is quite clear. But when analyzing the content of the reform agenda, not only Serbian but also of the other countries in the Western Balkans, it is obvious that there is a very strong prominence of particularly two areas. As you, well, maybe not everybody in the audience knows that there are, let's say, 4 and also a 5th key reform areas in the reform agendas of all the countries, starting with business environment and private sector development, green and digital transition, that somehow goes as one large area, human capital, fundamental rights and rule of law, and for some countries, Serbia doesn't have this area, public administration reform. As far as I know, the reason why Serbia doesn't have this 5th area is because there is an ongoing sector budget support, which is also a performance-based instrument, a financial instrument of the EU. But when analyzing the reform agendas, there is a clear prominence of the business environment and private sector development, and also green and digital transitions. And in fact, when it comes to Serbia, those two are really the highest two areas in terms of the amount of funds which Serbia can withdraw based on those reforms. In total, Serbia can count on 1.6 billion euros until the end of 2027. Of course, if it manages to implement all the reform steps, all these detailed steps, quantitative and qualitative, that it has committed to in the reform agenda. Now, is convergence sufficient to push the accession process? Well, it is certainly not sufficient. It is an inherent and necessary element, but it is definitely not sufficient. And I think that for Serbia, as the best performing economy in the region, probably convergence is not, perhaps not even the biggest problem which we have right now. I would say that the biggest problem that Serbia is currently facing on its EU integration path is democracy and rule of law. And this is where the last Commission's report has, in my opinion, been a bit timid in terms of recognizing the issues and the problems, although it does, of course. But we see that there has been very, very limited progress. I mean, I think that the Commission, could not add an additional very, very, very to the limited, but there has been a strong prevalence of very limited or no progress areas in this segment of the reforms. The reform agenda itself is not very heavy on these reforms. As I said, it is primarily a convergence instrument. Of course, we can speak about the importance of rule of law and democracy for convergence. I mean, a country cannot really advance its economy towards a modern, rule-based economy which can offer and guarantee equal rights to investors, both domestic and foreign, guarantee fair judicial processes, etc., if it does not really advance on its rule of law agenda. That said, in the area of fundamental rights and rule of law, Serbia actually has only 2 reform steps in the area of judiciary, which represent 10% of all reform steps in this area and only 9% of all the funds in this area. And if we would look at the percentages in the entire reform agenda, of course, that would shrink to much less. But I think that it's good to see this relative to the entire area dealing with fundamentals and rule of law. And in addition to the issues of judicial reform and the judiciary, there are several other areas in the fundamentals which are quite key regarding fight against corruption, fight against organized crime, but also, for example, freedom of expression, which we know is one of the greatest stumbling blocks in Serbia's EU accession process. And here, actually, we also have 2 steps, again, worth around 9% of the funds in the fundamental rights and rule of law area. But, for example, the first deadline is already now at the end of December. We are supposed to have the amendments, adoption of the amendments of 3 pieces of legislation: the law on electronic media, law on public information, and public service media, yes, public broadcaster. And we know that the working group met for the first time only last week, I think. So obviously, we are already running late. I mean, we know that the entire process was really taking a lot of time, and the reform agendas were approved a bit later than was foreseen from the onset of the process. But we actually need to see what will be the pace of these reforms and to what extent the Serbian authorities will really be committed to implementing even these few selected areas. This, of course, doesn't mean that these are the only things that are supposed to be done in the area of fundamental rights and rule of law. There is a plethora of reforms that need to be implemented I would say also numerous practices which need to be changed in order for the EU to really start, let's say, believing that Serbia is attempting at least to reform towards a rule-based European country.
Thank you, Milena, for the excellent breakdown of the reform agenda, which is a complicated document. Well, you've made it simple enough yet precise for the audience and for myself to even better understand it and get a better grasp of it. But with that said, now going to the second round of questions, and each answer should be around 5 minutes long. I'd like to go back to Gačević. I'm now changing a bit the order. Mr. Gačević, we've just heard from Milena her breakdown, and she rightly indicated that, and I quote, we're already running late. So with that in mind, I'd like to highlight that the recent statement by the Serbian president really caught us a bit off guard and dominated the media, which is that Serbia, and I quote, or the goal is to meet all criteria for EU membership by the end of 2026. The last time we talked to Minister Mišević 6 months ago, at that time, 2027 was the target date. This was reiterated by Minister Đurić, another minister, even President himself. So considering that we're running late, how does Serbia actually plan to manage these newly set ambitions? And how do you explain the change in the motivation to actually speed up the entire process and put 26 instead of 27 as the key aim in the next period? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. But first of all, I mean, there are some areas where we are more advanced than, especially regarding the reform agenda as well. And I would just like to mention that just recently we introduced, actually we abolished the free visa regime for 4 countries, which we showed more willingness to go even further than it was agreed in our action plan and with the reform agenda.
Can you tell us those countries? It was already done. Can you share the countries or?
I think it passed the government decision. So, so it is Qatar. Qatar. Sorry, now you caught me off. But Mongolia, Qatar, Kuwait, and Oman. Oman, yes. So those 4 countries. There are some parts which are more challenging, but rest assured that delay will be quite symbolic. So we are aiming to fulfill all these benchmarks that we set in front of us in January, maybe the latest beginning of February. But what caused the change of the date, as I tried to touch upon in my first address, so negotiation process is a two-way street. So in order to proceed faster in negotiation process, there needs to be positive attitude on both sides. This is not criticism, but I would just like to remind everyone that there are so many negotiation positions which we presented to the European Commission, and they're there for more than, some of them, 5 years. Let me remind you that there is a extremely important chapter about foreign security policy, chapter 30, where we still haven't got a screening report from the EU. We realize that reform agenda is actually the catalyst of negotiation process, and this is a real game changer when it comes to advancing in the EU path. And our internal goal now, when we are talking about these dates, is to align with the all acquis. But again, let me remind you that harmonization of the EU acquis is a constant process. So that usually lasts even after the official conclusion of the negotiation process. So there is always a room to adopt new plans for achieving your or pursuing your internal goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that said, I'd like to go back straight to my colleague Milena. We've just heard talks about the new aspirations, new optimism in the government vis-a-vis the target date of 2026. We know the Commission endorsed Montenegrin own internal date to close the negotiations by 26, Albania's by 27. So I guess this all plays a part in motivating the Serbian state and creating this peer pressure, which I guess is important considering that this year we mark the 20th anniversary of the Big Bang, 10th anniversary of Serbia's ongoing negotiations. So my question to you is, how do you, as a member of civil society, assess this new goal of 26 as the target date? And in the context of today's topic, what are your expectations of the Polish presidency when it comes to resolving some of the issues we have touched upon during this discussion? Thanks.
I have to start by saying that I don't see that new enthusiasm really around, and maybe Miroslav can correct me if I'm wrong, but from my interactions with the colleagues from the public administration, I don't see that there is anything else than business as usual happening in the administration, which basically is supposed to carry out the entire process of legal alignment and creating the conditions and the institutions and the capacities for the implementation of the legislation. So when we speak about fulfilling all the conditions until the end of 2026, both legal alignment and the implementation, so creation of this enabling environment for this legislation to be implemented, to me, it seems like a highly unrealistic scenario. And I speak as somebody who has worked in the administration. I was in the administration, for example, when we got the Commission's questionnaire, and we managed to respond to the questionnaire in only 3 months, but only because the entire administration was tirelessly under the Deputy Prime Minister Miroslav Labus, who is with us today. The administration was working tirelessly to achieve this. And let me again just point out that at that time we were not being chased by any deadlines. We did not have performance-based instruments with clearly stated deadlines for reforms. So somehow the government was setting very tight deadlines by itself because it was trying to catch up at that time with Croatia. We have had various other statements in the previous year. The former Minister of European Integration, Jadranka Joksimović, at one point declared that Serbia would be fully ready and satisfy all the criteria by the end of 2018. Nothing happened. So, to be honest, I'm really not persuaded. I mean, I would need much more evidence in order to be persuaded that, you know, this time we are serious. And it's a little bit like that fable, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. After you say it for so many times and nothing happens, I'm not sure that anyone will come running. But at the same time, I have to say that this time around, there is a lot of enthusiasm on the side of the EU, which was not existent, you know, in the first decade of the 2000s when Serbia was, you know, trying to really run towards the EU. Now the EU is more, you know, because it is recognizant of the geopolitical imperative of the enlargement, and we have heard from the previous speakers about that. So now the EU is really looking for any possibility to push and to advance a candidate country towards membership, of course, by advancing reforms, because still, despite the geopolitical imperative, nobody is offering well, a free lunch to the candidates, if I can say so. You asked me also what I believe that Poland can do as an incoming presidency. Well, first of all, Poland is a country that only a year ago, or even less than a year ago, managed to make a huge U-turn in its own democratic governance system. And I think it actually has a lot of valuable lessons to offer to Serbia. I think that Poland is now in a very good condition, despite the difficulties that it still has in implementing all the reforms that it has set, that the new government has set out to implement. But I think that it is now in a good condition to really insist on rule of law and to try to bring back the rule of law at the heart of the Serbia's EU accession process, because I think that the major focus on CFSP alignment, but also on dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina, which honestly these two processes have not brought about any tangible results in the past, well, 6 months, but even longer. I think that now we really need a renewed focus on the fundamentals, renewed focus on rule of law and democracy as the basic enablers of competitiveness, of green transition, the just transition, and all other processes that we are speaking about in the context of the EU accession process. In terms of its work as a presidency and as a convener and moderator of the discussions in the Council, I think that Poland is in a very good position to continue the work that has already been done with huge support and role of the European Commission to innovate the enlargement policy. In addition to the financial incentives, which have now really been reinforced for the candidates through the new growth plan, I think that we, and also through the proposals for early market integration, the common regional market, what is still missing in the picture is more opportunities for merit-based participation of the candidates in the EU institutions. And now I'm going to speak about Strahinja's paper, which is probably, you know, a little bit stupid, but because we worked on this paper together and I helped, I believe that I can say a few words about that. We proposed already back in 2021 that this new approach to accession and enlargement should be based on both financial but also political and institutional incentives. And I will not speak about the financial ones because basically the new growth plan has implemented our recommendations to a large extent by creating a performance-based and a much higher financial offer. But the institutional participation proposals which we made have not yet been operationalized, except for participation of CSOs from the region in the European Economic and Social Committee and the Commission's opening of the doors for, well, let's say even opening them more than they were before for participation in expert groups of the Commission. But what the Commission has not offered in its own papers is something that pertains particularly to the role of the Council, and that is possibilities for merit-based participation in the work of the Council. Here I'm not speaking about informal Council meetings, but about our proposals on how the candidates can gradually increase their presence in the discussions in the mainstream Council's meetings based on the right of presence, not based on the right of participation. So since we cannot yet be full observers until we close the accession negotiations, there are legal possibilities in line with the Council Legal Services opinion to open the doors of the Council to countries to an extent in a way that they can come into the room, discuss on certain items of the agenda, share their concerns and opinions with the member states, hear also, you know, from the member states about this particular portfolio or dossier that is being discussed, and then leave the room. So this is quite limited in a way, but it is still a way in which our administrations can start increasing the capacities and gradually learning what is to be expected once we join the EU. And in our proposal, basically in this revised proposal that Strahinja and I have worked on, it is precisely the role of the Presidency that comes to the forefront, and especially for Poland as the lead of the new trio of the presidencies to adopt this new approach in which a country, for example, which has already opened the accession negotiations and the first cluster, can already start participating in the discussions of the Council which pertain to the first cluster and to any other opened clusters or chapters. Once a country closes a specific chapter, in our proposal, that would give it the right to participate in a more extended way. So once the chapter is provisionally closed, to become more regularly involved and to be involved in the work of the Council on all levels, so including the ministerial, but, you know, starting from the working groups to Coreper to the ministerial level. We really truly believe that this kind of institutional participation, but I underline if it is merit-based, so if it is not just given to everybody, you know, according to the same key and without respect for where they are in terms of performance on the chapters and in terms of the accession talks. If it is merit-based, it can greatly enhance first of all, the socialization of our administrations and our governments with the EU peers, peer learning from experience, seeing how the internal discussions work, what is the atmosphere, how this works, how collective responsibility is created and nurtured inside of the EU, how differences are also overcome. But I think that the idea of gradual integration is really conducive to this kind of introduction into the work of the Council, because we know that in the past enlargements after accession, member states have had a really difficult time to fill all the committees, all the various bodies with their representatives, and this actually results in a lot of losses for the new member state after accession because it is not capable of representing itself properly in the EU institutions and its interests, right? So in a way, this can also help the candidates, since we now already have this gradual accession process recognized, methodologically recognized by the Commission and by the European Council. This is now a good opportunity to push towards this kind of integration.
Thank you, Milena. Originally, I was going to ask the Hungarian ambassador, but as this is truly linked to the Polish presidency, I'd like to switch order, if you don't mind. Ambassador going to Polish embassy. We've just heard talks and expectations of the Polish presidency vis-a-vis enlargement, the necessity to renew this commitment, place more focus on the rule of law, but also to discuss how the presidency can actually integrate the financial incentives with institutional incentives, to make it institutional incentives a sort of this political integration that would allow the countries to socialize with their counterparts, but even before they start the official membership in the Union. So my question to you is, in that sense, what are the plans for Poland in the next 6 months to address these concerns and maybe adopt some of those ideas? And secondly, how do you plan to address the concerns that Poland, given its vicinity to Ukraine and the prioritization of Ukraine, how it will manage to balance between enlarging both to the east but also to the southeast of the European continent? Thanks.
Thank you for these ideas. I can only confirm that it was quite stressful for us, what you said. I mean, joining the EU and only then being able to participate in the working groups or closing the negotiations and then being able to become the true observer of how the Council works. I joined the MFA in just 2 years before we actually joined the EU, so I was a freshman, as the Americans would put it, then, and I could feel it. So I think your ideas, your proposals are valid. At the same time, I'm not in a position to speak here on behalf of the Council. It would need a broader support and the decision of all the member states, including the General Secretariat of the Council, to make it operational. However, on the Polish behalf, I can say that, as I mentioned, as a supporter of enlargement as such, we've been offering, actually from the beginning, big opportunities for all the aspiring member states and the officials from different parts of administration to learn from our know-how. We have been using not only TAIEX, that is made for this, but also we have our own projects like the Enlargement Academy. We had, I think, 2 people from the MFA, Serbian MFA, this year in Poland, visiting the ministry, learning, discussing, and so on. Only a few days ago, we had 3, if I'm not mistaken, representatives of the CSOs from Serbia and from other aspiring member states, of course, but from Serbia, visiting Wrocław and the vicinity for a program of reconciliation, to learn about our process of reconciliations with Germany. That has not been easy, believe me, and learning from this, and hopefully using the knowledge and to also boost the reconciliation here in the region where we think it's very needed. In terms of maybe a broader picture of enlargement, what to expect, I would like to underline that there are no preferences whatsoever in the process. As I mentioned before, for us, it is truly a merit-based process. The countries currently negotiating or aspiring to start negotiations, they are all on different levels. So it will be, for each of those countries, the process will be different. And therefore, I know there is maybe this slight preoccupation that Poland will focus more on the East than on Western Balkans because it's like closer to us. I would like to calm you down in a way that, as I said, it's merit-based. For us, the whole immediate vicinity of European Union is equally important. Therefore, do not be worried. We will be looking at all the countries at their own level, and coming back to Serbian key issues, let's call it, that we see as key issues that are needed like now, as soon as possible. These are, I think, well known. I think Miroslav could name them, even woken up in the night, because we've been telling them for so many times that it's well known. It's the obviously the reform agenda, the election reforms, the freedom of the media, generally speaking, and the alignment with our foreign policy. I think we are the country that is, as I said, feeling the external insecurity these days. So it is important for us.
Thank you very much. And just a message to Polish administration, you can always count on think tanks from Serbia to keep the government accountable, assist in prioritizing rule of law and addressing all of the issues that you mentioned. In fact, we were consulted by the Polish ministry multiple times already. So kudos to the ministry, and we hope other member states continue with this positive practice.
Just maybe one sentence about the CSOs, and now I remembered when you mentioned it. For the presidency, we created a special council that is meant for the CSOs in Poland to be able to take a very practical part in the running of the presidency. It will be meeting constantly during the presidency. The first meeting has already taken place, so it's a good. The CSOs are important for us. The civil society is hugely important.
Count us in. Now to go back to Ambassador Magyar, we've just heard about high expectations on vis-à-vis enlargement. Outlined the indications of what Serbia needs to do to accelerate its process. So as your presidency is now about to be over, soon by the end of the year, what advice would you have to Serbian government based on your so far experience, what it should do in the next period to really overcome some of the hurdles which we have identified, but also to add a sub-question, what would you advise to Polish presidency when it comes to your experience so that they would overcome some of the identified challenges that you might have faced during your presidency? Thanks.
So this is a serious homework. It is very good that once again, come back to Albania and Montenegro, that we are now talking in the Council about the target days, which was declared, and after that it was also announced by the Serbian politicians, by President Vučić. And this is a two-way street. So one is what is the homework from the candidate country, and the other side, the willingness from on the other side, not only from the institutions, but from the member states. In that regard, when we are talking about some positive effects, can we really dispute about whether this is quite brightly or not yet? But when we are talking about the achievements from the Serbian side, we really have to recognize these achievements, what was done in the latest day. We know about this new non-paper. This is an offer in many fields. And in that regard, the member states knows that what really has been done from the Serbian side, whether when we are talking what already mentioned about the negotiations with ODIHR regarding the water list, voting list, regarding the media, regarding the energy cooperation. I mean, for issuing some licensing for the gas interconnector, and also what Miroslav mentioned regarding the joint visa policy from the Serbian side. I think once again that we must take it serious that what the Serbian side mentioned, that they would be ready with its internal reform, that is really a prosperous idea. But in that regard, we are now at the end of the Hungarian presidency. Just look at for two solutions. If something will be achieved with Serbia, that will be, let's say, some atmosphere here in Serbia, and if the progress will be done with Serbia, what will be the reaction of the Serbian society? And that is the very important point now, that let's recognize the Serbian achievements. Let's do the very positive forward-looking steps with the Serbian, and of course that will be an easier way to continue from the Polish presidency. We have this experience when we close really when in the previous hour capacity, the each chapters with Croatia, Poland immediately started the ratification process. And that was really a bright result how two countries cooperated at that time. And I believe in our progress regarding after our handover towards the Poland. And yeah, the balanced approach towards the east and also towards the west, it must be crucial. You have mentioned some critical decisions, but let's remain also for the Thessaloniki offer for the Western Balkan countries 21 years before. And what is now the results? We know what has been achieved or what wouldn't been achieved. In that regard, for Hungary, we understood the importance of the CFSP alignment, but that is why we really are totally for the peace in our strong neighborhood and this peace diplomacy. So it still is on our table. Yesterday, my Prime Minister visited Erdogan, a couple of years, the Vatican, 3 years before with Mr. Trump. So we believe in that if we can manage a situation in Ukraine, it will be a positive effect also on Serbia. Regarding the inclusion, the candidate countries into the institutions, let's mention that during the Hungarian presidency, 4 of the candidate countries has been invited to the dialogue of the rule of law dialogue also. And gradual integration fully supports, but we have to underline that the gradual integration cannot be an alternative for the full membership. The main topic is now that whether the European Union itself, the member states, will be ready to accept the new candidate countries and in which time. 2 years ahead of us, that will be very serious. The financial framework will be very important from that regard. But look, what is now the overall political picture in the European Union? Less than 2 million people when they live in Germany, in France. There will be most probably another elections. I hope that French will solve this issue. But also in Poland will be an elections. And we really would like to see a very progressive way for Serbia that this political agenda will not influence the path for Serbia.
Yeah. We hope as well, and thank you both for the words of caution, but pieces of advice for both our government and the EU in general and the Polish presidency. Now to conclude the second session, I'd like to give the floor to Emanuele Giaufret. I know you're also running late to another place or another meeting, so I just wanted to ask you to wrap up the discussion when it comes to what can we expect in the time that comes, maybe cluster 3, maybe funding from the reform agenda, and in particular Marta Kos. She's the new star. What this star brings to Serbia?
I think you can expect everything. You have to be very ambitious, and you need to put the bar very high. The president said by 2026 all criteria are met. I think the fact that the president said it, I think, is important, is relevant. They will be certainly ready to disburse the first tranche of the growth facility. This is the prepayment that will be coming soon. So yes, there will be funding. Cluster 3 under discussions now in the Council. I think that we will get there. There are 3 things that we need. I think the government will need to be Serbia will need to be doing in the coming weeks. I think the government and the parliament will need to intensify the reform pace, and these require 3 things. One is to understand that this is the time to move. This is the time to take this unique opportunity, which means that in terms of reforms, yes, compromise will have to be made, concession will have to be made, genuine reforms will have to be put on the table. Number 2, and this is what Commissioner Kos highlighted in her recent speech, this requires the contribution not only of government and majority, but of society. So we need also to have those in civil society that aspire for the country to become a member of the European Union to engage politically, engage in terms of civil society push, and I think civil society, as you are part of civil society, you are there. And the political parties that are standing in the opposition that need to be, that want Serbia to become a part of the European Union, need also to engage. Whenever there's a genuine reform they think is good and will take Serbia closer to the European Union. And then lastly, beyond the political push, that is number 1 and number 2, is we also need to deliver technically. So ministries need to be able to transform, adopt some technical legislation. They need to have the capacity, the time, etc. And this will require a mobilization of the administration. Unfortunately, not every time that we go to ministries we find the adequate capacity to address the issues. This is a reality we discussed with the Ministry of European Integrations and others in the administration. The capacities are relatively limited. So in that case, all the ministries need to allocate adequate capacity, give clear instructions to the staff that this is a priority. So with these 3 things, I think we will be able to get many things done. Commissioner Kos will be the first full-time enlargement commissioner after 10 years. And she did say something very interesting the other day. She said, I believe that by the end of this commission, 2029, we should have 1 or more countries that are on the finishing line. So in a way, she was more optimistic that Charles Michel was a year and a half ago. And I can tell you that she will work 24/7 in order to get this done.
Thank you very much. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Marta Kos after her hearing in Brussels. I invited her to Belgrade to meet us at think tanks. So please send her our regards, and we hope that she comes to Belgrade very soon. Now I'd like to go to questions and comments. We started a bit late. Ambassador, if you need to leave us early, that's fine as well. But and thank you very much for your presence. But I would like to indicate that we might have around 10 minutes in case there are any questions and comments from the audience. The rest of our panelists will remain. Thank you, Emanuele Giaufret, once again. I see a hand over there. Yes?
Hello, my name is Aleksandar Vukalović. I deal with cybersecurity. It's not important. Something is very wrong because in past years, both sides of Serbian position is this process is extremely satisfied. It's very, very wrong. The second thing, the question is, EU is society of friends or allies? It's a very big question. Nobody dare to ask. Third, I hope from the Polish presidency that they insist on the third part of Chapter 31. The problem in Western Balkan is not security. The problem is that third part.
What do you mean by
Or
third part?
maybe, who knows. Third part
Cyber.
is defense.
Ah, okay.
Okay. And wrong on the Serbian side is that Serbia want to approach to EU on opposite direction of all Eastern Europe. I think it is not impossible. And the basic problem is the phrase reforms.
Who would you like to answer this, maybe?
For
To reflect.
6 million Serbs and all others Europeans.
Okay. Just a general comment.
And, no. It's very important.
Yeah.
Reforms means nothing. Wind of changes, but it needs something more than what we have. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have other questions and comments? I see, yeah. We can start here with Mr. Labus, and then we can grab more. Yes. I'm glad that there's a high interest in the audience. Please.
Today is Friday the 13th, not the best day, even for me to talk. Well, I have one statement and one proposal. The statement concerning the Hungarian presidency. You did your job well, excellently. The Europe would be much better if you succeeded. Unfortunately, you failed. And that's the story about Europe. So that is next, my point, proposal for the Polish government not to fail as Hungary, because you have excellent opportunity. And I would propose you to think once again about your goals. One is security combined with the enlargement. Enlargement has two target points. One is Western Balkan, and that's fine. The other is Eastern Europe, and that's not fine. During the war in Ukraine, your enlargement policy would be a hostile policy toward Russia. So I don't support Russia on Ukraine, absolutely not. But Russia is your neighbor. You should have peaceful relationships with all your neighbors. Otherwise, you will be in war permanently. So my proposal is make a peace with Russia. You, as Poland, has that chance, not Hungary. I don't elaborate why. You have that chance. So think about enlargement policy. Think about what is ideology in Russia, even if you don't support that. But this is your neighbor. Should have good neighborly relationships. So Russia is a part of Europe. We would like to join the Europe as a peaceful framework, not always to have some problems, that proxy war, that other proxy war, and so on. We are small countries. We cannot influence that policy, but you are a big country, and you can influence that. Take that chance. I know it's tricky. I know there will be much opposition to that, but take your chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Later, Hungarian and Polish ambassadors can comment on this. comment. Jelena, maybe one or two more, and then we will have to wrap up. Yes, and afterwards, the colleague in the back.
Hello, I am Jelena from Belgian Center for Security Policy. Actually, I wanted to comment on something that Mr. Giaufret said, but he has left. However, I think it's an important message, because I think he didn't formulate it quite right. He said that the opposition and the civil society need to engage. We do engage. We have been very proactive, but the other side, the government, doesn't include us, even when we want to be included in, for example, changing the criminal legislation, etc. However, why should we now want to be included with a government who arrests activists on the street, who conducts smear campaigns against civil society representatives, etc. So I just wanted to say that the ball is on the other side, on the government side. And then I wanted also to comment, of course, there is great frustration on all sides about how lack of results there is in this stalled process of EU integration and transformation of Serbia in the EU accession process. But also the government has kind of always used this approach of dodging its own responsibility for the effects. And of course, we have also been very critical of the European Union because it couldn't make some decisions also regarding other countries in the region, and it also shares responsibility on why the process has been so stalled. But citizens are also, especially the pro-European ones who believed in the transformational power of the EU, are also disappointed when the process is progressing, but actually they don't see in the field any progress regarding rule of law, regarding democracy, when they see that the National Assembly adopts 68 laws without any discussion in the parliament. Some are very important ones. And what will be the message to open another cluster? I can only remind you that back when the cluster 4 was opened, there were environmental protests, mass environmental protests all over Serbia. And this cluster deals with green agenda. What will be the message now when there are people in the streets being smeared, being arrested, being criminally prosecuted, and who protest because the corruption kills? So that's my question.
Thank you. I suppose maybe later the ministry official could respond, and maybe Milena's member of civil society can give a couple of thoughts on the matter. Gentlemen, yes?
Dobar dan, ja sam Mihajlović Jovan iz Petrovca na Mlavi, ispred organizacije I mi se pitamo. Pa pre svega pitanja za naše ministarstvo EU integracija. Gde je zapelo u pregovorima sa Evropskom unijom? Upali smo u vrzino kolo ka evropskom putu I u mnogim poglavljima ne vidim skoro nikakav napredak. Uglavnom je to tapkanje u mestu ili imamo čak I nazadovanje. I dva konkretna pitanja. Da li će Srbija pristupiti SEPA sistemu 2025. I kada će početi da se primenjuje ETIAS sistem za putovanje u zemlje Evropske unije?
So the context was that this is a never-ending cycle of negotiations, but the two specific questions from this context were at least whether we can have SEPA in 25, and the other one was on the application of ETIAS, right, to Serbian citizens. I think we've gathered enough for the time being, so maybe we can start with the Polish presidency onwards.
Okay, responding to your comments regarding the enlargement to the south and to the east. As I said, there will be no preferences, and keeping the friendly relations with Russia. Being Polish, I need to say it's somewhat difficult these days. We have had periods of very good relations with Russia. We have had periods of worse relations with Russia. But when it comes to the war in Ukraine, we were not the ones who started it. Nobody asked for it. It wasn't Poland, it wasn't Ukraine, it wasn't the EU. So that would be my question. The ones responsible should maybe think twice. I understand your plea that Serbia would like to join the EU that is secure. Believe me, it is our goal too. We don't want any war. We are a country who suffered tremendously during its history of different wars. So we do know how it feels to be a victim. I know, we share the same feelings. I bet.
As this section of questions and comments were interlinked between Poland and Hungary, then I'd like to go to Ambassador Magyar to reflect as well.
Just very shortly, what is crucial for having a better atmosphere in that regard that you, as the professor mentioned, to keep every possible way open, I mean the channels, among the key player on the global sphere. There are many questions to be answered that who are able to stop the war, who are able to achieve something, to not to make more, let's say, harms in our neighborhood. We are very critical in that regard because we are directly neighboring with Ukraine, and we understood this position. But during our presidency, we have started these visits to the main capitals on the global world. My prime minister sent a letter to the EU officials at that time, and this letter is still there in these boxes. Now, just 2 days before, we launched an initiative to reach a ceasefire during the Christmas time because we are believers in Europe. We have on our values, which is very similar to Serbia. And the second initiative was to exchange the hostages. What is the outcome until now? One part is ready to continue talk on that regard. The second is still in the waiting position. And we really hope that the all negative effects which occurred by these conflicts will have a calm period very soon. Let's wait the January, and the talks maybe will be different in that regard. In which manner, in which perspective, we can manage to do something for our peace in our continent. Regarding the enlargement and the moving forward with Serbia, it is obvious now that currently, which is wrong, everything is connected to everything. Conditions, criteria, fulfillment, addresses, etc. But now, what we are talking about now, to make a progress with the Chapter 3, which from the Commission's side, semesterly 3 years, is declared that it is ready to be opened. Let's focus on that. Let's do step by step. I can understand that the reforms on the whole society, in the whole economy, in the whole security system is needed. But let's do it very smartly. Let's do it, once again, step by step. And when Serbia, the Serbian society, will receive a positive message that the European Union and the member states are ready to take Serbia seriously, we will be really apprised. And that will be really the best achievement until now in these days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, as we're running out of time, to please ask Mr. Gačević, and then proceeding with Milena will conclude the event.
Are you okay if I say in English, you understand English regarding SEPA? And okay, but firstly, I should have said this from the beginning. I missed to say a huge thing to Ambassador Magyar for all his support, but it is, don't get me wrong, but it goes without saying. So we are extremely thankful. Thank you. But once again, thank you very much for all that you've done in order to support us on the EU path. Just briefly regarding SEPA, so we already handed over the draft application, and as far as we are familiar, Commission will not have any remarks. So it's just a matter of date, whether it's going to be beginning of January or second. I mean, most likely it will be second half of January, but it will be sooner rather than later. And regarding the ETIAS, luckily, we still don't have a clear date when this will be in force. I say luckily because we are afraid how it would affect sentiment in our population, because ETIAS system and the other one, it resembles on something which we all remember how it was decades ago, although we do understand the need of the EU, because the basic need is to increase the security. But we already passed that proposal to the EU. The best possible way for the security of the EU and the security of the borders of the EU would be to incorporate the whole Western Balkans in the Schengen system. Because when you look at it, is a bit bizarre situation, because it's both internal and external border of the EU. So the best way to safeguard the borders of the EU would be, of course, with fulfillment of all criteria, is to bring the whole region in the Schengen system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to ask for final remarks by Milena.
I will just, they're not final remarks. I will just respond to what Jelena said. Yes, there is indeed a huge question of how the Serbian population would perceive the opening of the third cluster now at the height of the tensions which we have in the society, and with numerous missteps and let's call them missteps from various institutions and levels of authorities. Back in 2021, when the decision on the opening of the fourth cluster was being made, my message to the ambassadors in the country and the officials in the EU that I was meeting was that although the opening of the cluster was not deserved in terms of the reforms and the rule of law, that it would represent a good investment in the future, and that it should be communicated as an investment into the future of the process and as support, particularly for those people that were protesting against Rio Tinto and against the future potential environmental damage. Because structuring the relationship with the EU through the accession negotiations is probably the best way for the EU to also drive and influence the reforms here. At least it should be. The accession negotiations were opened for this cluster. That message was nowhere to be seen. And it doesn't mean that the EU is not capable of making this kind of communication, because obviously in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the decision to grant them the candidate status and the announcement of the potential negotiations was very nicely communicated as something that was being offered as a token of trust and goodwill, rather than a really merit-based decision. So there is a possibility to communicate this way. So this is basically what I reiterated to all the ambassadors now. it is difficult for me as a program director of European Policy Center in Serbia to say, I don't want, you know, I don't advise that the EU opens another cluster with Serbia. We know that the opening of another cluster is not going to bring any tangible change on the ground. It is not going to drastically change anything. It is just going to structure better the relations between our institutions and the EU. But I think that this kind of communication, the messaging surrounding this needs to be extremely clear, because let us not forget that we live in a country where the media landscape is extremely controlled by the government, and it will be very difficult for the EU to pass this message and not to have it spinned the other way around, where the authorities would then say, yeah, well, you know, we have done everything correctly and we deserved this. We haven't deserved it, but I still think that the EU can make this kind of an investment to just push the process forward.
Thank you, Milena. Thank you, dear guests, for your interesting questions and comments. If there are any more, we can continue discussing them and addressing them in the hallway or in the lobby. I also wish to thank the Hungarian Embassy Ambassador for your hard work. It's really appreciated, and we wish good luck to the Polish Embassy and Polish Presidency in the next 6 months. See you in 6 months. Thank you.